I'm Adriel Wiggins with Adriel Wiggins Author Services and Consulting, and today I have with me Laura Bradbury. Laura is the best-selling advert. Let me start that again. Best-selling author Laura Bradbury published her first book, a heartfelt memoir about her leap away from a prestigious legal career in London to live in a tiny French village with her Burgundian husband in My Great Escape after being diagnosed with PSC, a rare autoimmune bile duct liver disease. Since then, Laura has received a life-saving donor liver transplant from her friend Nissa, published many more Grape Series books, and his long-anticipated cookbook accompanied her memoirs entitled Bisous and Brioche.
Yep,
and she has
that's right.
also written the Winemaker's Trilogy, a romantic novel set in the Burgundy Vineyards, and with renewed health, writes even more passion than ever. Now living and writing in the west coast of Canada with new liver and three Franco-Canuck daughters, collectively known as the Bevy. Laura runs three charming vacation rentals in Burgundy with her husband and has an enviable collection of beach glass and does all she can to support PSC and organ donations awareness and research.
Yeah.
Laura, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I have the Grape series. I've not read it yet, to be perfectly honest. However,
That's okay.
I did read.
I know you're a busy woman, so that's okay.
I did read How to Write a Beloved and Best-Selling Memoir, which is your nonfiction book that was released back in March, right?
Yeah. I did it a workshop at one of my favorite writing conferences, which is the Surrey International Writing Conferences. I did a workshop, and then I took everything that I did in the workshop and I made it into a book. So I actually published the paperback in January.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
So let the description for how to write a best-selling memoir is: get unstuck. The world needs your story. Do you have a memoir in you, but you are struggling to get it out? Laura Bradbury, author of 8 beloved and #1 best-selling memoirs, will get you from a vague idea to a marketable book. All right. So tell me why you, other than the workshop, because you just mentioned that, why did you decide to go ahead and write this book specifically?
Well, I was a writer who had started and stopped basically from the time I turned 30. I've always wanted to write, and I started and stopped countless manuscripts, but I just couldn't seem to finish anything. And then in 2012, I was diagnosed with, totally out of the blue, diagnosed with PSC, which is this really rare autoimmune liver disease, and it's terminal unless you can get a liver transplant. But there's lots of things that can kill you on the way to getting a liver transplant. So all of a sudden, I was living with this this sort of uncertainty and possible death and everything over my head. And so the morning after I was diagnosed, actually, my whole life had just spun on its axis. And I woke up and I was just completely disoriented. And I walked downstairs and I flipped open my laptop, and I had a pack of Post-its beside my laptop, and I took one of them and I said a bad word, F you, I'm not dead yet. Won't say the actual word. And I stuck it on my computer screen and I started writing. And what came out was my first memoir, My Grape Escape. And memoirs really, I was writing them, I think, partially in that stage of life because I'd been given this kind of possible death sentence, and I had 3 daughters who were quite young at the time. And I really wanted to leave behind the story of how their father and I fell in love, and sort of important lessons, kind of integrating that into the memoir, so they knew about my life if I wasn't around to be able to tell them. And so, the previous projects that I'd started had always been fiction, but somehow memoir found me, and memoir really is the basis of my writing career. I self-published My Grape Escape because I didn't know how much time I had. And so I didn't have time to wait around for the mechanisms of traditional publishing, like finding an agent, and then an agent possibly finding a publisher, and just the uncertainty all around that. And I was hearing more and more about self-publishing. And so I just kind of taught myself how to do that. And with the help of the self-publishing community, which is incredibly collaborative, which is just one of the best things about it. I published it and it became a bestseller almost immediately. And just the feedback I got and the satisfaction I got from writing memoir, that really, created the basis of my writing career and of becoming an actual working writer. And then just, through communicating with readers and the workshops that I've put on and, aspiring writers, there's a lot of people I feel that have these stories inside them. And I truly feel that the world needs these stories, but they were blocked in the same way that I was blocked for 10 years. And so I so wanted to be able to take what I had learned and just distill it and give it to them. Maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, because everyone's on their own journey, but just here's everything I learned. Take it, and if anything's useful, go ahead and use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you will be able to read my review of how to write a best-selling memoir at adrielwiggins.com/memoir-writing. And you can read all my full thoughts there. But one of the things that really hit me about it is that it's a great primer for people new to indie publishing. If you've never published anything before and you are thinking about self-publishing, this is actually a really good option for getting a good foundation of the self-publishing business. It's not everything. There's not, you don't go into tons of detail about every aspect of everything, but it's a good introductory primer of, hello, this is the self-publishing world. This is the basics of what you need to know. Now go learn more.
Yeah.
And I really loved that about it. Oddly enough, it might actually become my go-to as far as handing to new VAs or new authors and saying, read this first, okay, and then come back and we'll take a look at David Gaughran and all the other awesome people who have also made primers on those things. But this is a good quick, hello, this is what self-publishing is.
Yeah.
So thanks, I really liked that.
Oh, well, that's great. And I didn't want to go into too much detail because there is so much. Kind of the point I wanted to get across is here's what I've learned and what I use on a regular basis. And then here's where to go to get all this other fantastic information, because, there's David Gaughran, there's Joanna Penn, there's the Six Figure Author podcast, there's the What I Wish I'd Known podcast, there's so many wonderful, there's so much wonderful information sharing in particularly the self-publishing community that I really wanted this book to be somewhat evergreen. And, I so admire the people that compile all this changing information, but I really wanted it to be something kind of quick and to the point to unstick people, to at least get them started on that journey. And actually the next book in my Creative Catalyst series, the sort of how-to writing ones, is how to get over self-doubt and start writing, how to identify those roadblocks and get past it. So it'll be a good complement to the memoir. Yeah. So I purposely didn't go into too much depth because there's just so many people who are so much better at it than I am. about the self-publishing industry and its changing nature. And yeah.
All right. So you've said that you wanted to write the memoirs initially, so you left a piece of yourself behind for your daughters. But before that, you tried for years. So which author before all that wasn't your greatest inspiration necessarily, but made you think, I could be an author, I could actually do this?
Well, I have my undergrad literature degree, and it's interesting, like literature degrees are great to have for writers, but I don't think they're by any means necessary. And there's a detrimental side of it that in academia, I hope this is changing now, but in academia, when you're in the literary world in academia, it's very snobby, to be honest, about so the only kind of I was taught the only kind of valid literature out there was very kind of highbrow literary fiction. And I actually, it got to the point where it was, I've been a lifelong reader, voracious reader, and it actually, the depressing nature of so many of these stories and kind of the opaque character development and the lack of like, as a reader, you just didn't feel drawn into this world. It was very alienating. That was the highbrow Canadian literary fiction at the time, that when I was in university, which is in the 90s. And it actually turned me off writing completely. And then after I'd had my second child and was like not sleeping for like 2 years and was just completely, I'd almost stopped reading. And then my sister's like, oh, I just found this book, Outlander. Have you read it? You have to read this. and so I got into it, and I was like reading at stoplights. I was so into it. And then I remembered what I had loved about reading and books and when I was growing up, and what I had lost actually through my academic years was that love of storytelling. And so that, and it's not that I thought I could write like Diana Gabaldon, but I just felt that's so inspiring. I said, oh, this is what I want. I don't want to necessarily spend like 3 years making the perfect sentence. I want to write a story that allows people to like get caught up in and live another life for a while, and experience another experience that may be very foreign to them, and keeps them turning the pages late into the night. And that is what I wanted. So I didn't necessarily think I could do it, but it was highly motivating. And then I started reading tons of genre fiction, and I'm a very eclectic reader. I read like 3-4 books a week, and of all different type, nonfiction, fiction, everything. And yeah, I just loved it so much that I thought, okay, it reminded me of what I really wanted to do. So something to aspire to, in any case.
Diana Gabaldon, here you are.
And I think there's so many writers I've heard of that have had that.
Yes. So what's the first time that you thought, wow, I'm a real author?
That was probably, I think it was 2013 or 14. So I'd been going to this writers conference, the Surrey International Writers Conference, for probably 15 years before that. And actually Diana Gabaldon goes there every year. And it's just, I live on Vancouver Island, and it's just a ferry ride away from me. And that group of writers had become kind of my writing family, and we all supported each other, and we still do to this day, actually. So I've been going and attending this conference for years and years and years. And then when my Grape Escape came out and became a bestseller, I was invited to come back and teach and be a keynote speaker at that conference. So for me, that was so meaningful. Like, it was so meaningful to be on the other side of, and I continue to attend that conference every year, either as like a teacher or as a participant. Doesn't really matter to me. But yeah, it just was amazing to be on the other side and to have the lanyard that said, workshop presenter and keynote speaker and stuff. Like, to me, that really felt like, okay, I've kind of crossed the river to the other side. Yeah.
Yes, I completely identify with that.
Yeah.
So what's the oddest part of your routine that you simply must do in order to sit down and write?
Well, I have to say, I wish I was one of those people who could concentrate anywhere, but I really cherish a quiet house, like being by myself at home. And coffee is not an unusual ritual for authors, but it is essential for me. And I drink it from a bowl in the morning, because that's how we drink our hot drinks in France, is in a bowl. So I have 2 massive bowls of coffee in the morning as I write. And I just think I convert the caffeine into words, basically. So
I think all authors do that.
I think so. So, and then I like having my dog beside me. She sleeps on the couch beside me. And, but there's nothing really terribly unusual. I definitely do. Walking really helps. Like, I write until my brain just is kind of backfiring. And then I go for a walk, have lunch, and then I come back and I write some more before the whole after school routine begins, and the driving and the rest of it. So yeah, so it's not that unusual, but I really do go hard on the coffee. The bowls of coffee.
So what is your biggest writing obstacle? Not enough coffee in the bowl?
For so many years, and this is what the self-doubt book will touch on, For so many years, I was waiting for some external validation to begin. Like I was waiting for an agent to say, oh, your work is really good, or a publisher, or to get some kind of contract, or to have a writer I really respected, raving about my work. Like I really was waiting for that external sort of signal. Okay, you're a writer now, you can go. And it took me a long time to realize that that was a huge obstacle for like a decade for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was diagnosed with this disease, I just realized that I had to give that permission to myself, like that magic fairy wand of permission. I'd had it all along, and I was the one. I had to tap my own head with it, and nobody else could do that for me. I had to give myself the permission to do this, and so yeah, that was really a massive turning point to me. And I hope it's also encouraging to writers who, have been stuck or are stuck and feel like maybe they'll never be able to finish a manuscript or never be able to become a writer. Like, I just want to, we can change completely in 24 hours. We can change our habits and stuff in 24 hours. The human capacity for change and adaptability and stuff is mind blowing. So, just because you've been stuck for a certain amount of time, it can even be up to 10 years, doesn't mean that you have to continue being stuck. You can give so you have that power to give yourself permission at any time.
So I read a book yesterday. You made me think of this, and I loved this quote so much. I took a screen capture of it, and I have saved it, and I plan on printing it up on paper and hanging it in my office. It says, "He was brilliant. Fight fire with fire. Why hadn't I thought of that? I guess because I didn't realize I had fire."
Yeah.
For me, that's a place that a lot of writers have either been or probably will be in the future. Is you don't really think you have what it takes. You don't think that you have the fire, and you want to tell your story, but it's like you said, it's stuck inside because you don't realize just how capable you are of getting it out.
Yeah.
And so here's your encouragement for today. You do have the fire. You can fight fire with fire.
Yeah. No, you definitely do. And there's so much fear that's, so much of the perfectionism and the not wanting to share your work and not wanting to finish your work is fear of judgment. And, I eventually had to get to the mindset where I had possible death on one hand. And so I was like, what have I got to lose? So what if everyone hates it and it's complete garbage, what I write? Who cares? I might die. So, the stakes all of a sudden shifted, and I really, it really sort of snap things into perspective for me that, so what if I failed at doing this? I could get better. I could keep working at it. I could get better. And even now, there's still people who don't like my books. There's a lot of people who love them, but there's always the odd person. Like this new novel that came out, the reviews have been great. But a few days before it came out, I got a note from a reader saying, it wasn't a reader that I was familiar with, but said, basically, I hate everything about this book. Like the characters are wooden. I hate it. Like, and just basically detailed all the reasons she hated it. So my assistant Trish said it to me, and she's like, "Oh, I don't really know what to do with this." And I'm like, "Well, I know that I did the absolute best I could on that novel, and so que sera sera. Like, I know that I did the absolute best job I could at the time, and that's all I can do. That's all anyone can do." And then all the positive reviews totally rolled in and overwhelmed that one. But there's always going to be people that don't like what you do, and it's a real mindset shift, I could talk for hours about obstacles. They're all most of them are self-imposed, right? So like 99% of them. Yeah.
I'm also currently working on a content creation calendar for authors. And one of the things that I talk about in that is that marketing is just as much about repelling the wrong readers as it is attracting the right ones. So that was not your right reader, She was not your ideal at all. Maybe for one of your books, but not, that.
She might have been one of the ones who really likes the memoir, but doesn't like anything that veers into romance,
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I know that is a thing with a lot of your readers. They do like the fade to black policy of your
Yes.
memoirs,
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have a little bit of sex in the romance, then no, they wouldn't like it.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's one of the greatest tools of marketing, is to be able to, for people to look at a book and immediately know, based on the marketing and the packaging of it, I should read this or not read this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And even though like my sort of heat scale for the romance is very medium, like it's not at all sort of steamy or anything, it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I totally get that. And it's very close to my memoirs, but does differ in that one respect. Plus it's fiction, plus it's like a bit more toward the romance end of the scale. But yeah, like, I used to be devastated every time I would get an unsubscribe from my newsletter list, because that's something I really work at cultivating and have been doing since the beginning. And now I'm super happy. I'm like, well, that's great. We're in a good fit. And that's, and now I don't have to pay for you because it's become quite expensive. And that's fine. Like, some people are it's gonna really resonate with, and other people not. And like you said, it's all about finding the people that it resonates with.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you prefer to network, and what impact do you think those avenues have had on your sales?
Like network with other authors, you mean, or readers?
Or readers, both, either one.
Well, I definitely think the newsletter is huge. Like that is probably that's what I recommend. And I recommend this in my book. Like if you haven't started a mailing list, even if it's 2 people, like yesterday, you should start today. Like because any other social media platform, you don't own it, and it can change at any point. Whereas the emails and your readers who are on your mailing list, that like you always have that power to communicate with them directly. So definitely I send out a monthly newsletter that Trish my assistant helps me format. She's so good at it. I'm so bad at it, but she does a beautiful job of formatting. And I really pack it full of, things that I consider that as a reader, I would want, like things that I really try to add value, like book recommendation lists, recipes, news from France, news about writing life, special sneak peeks, like I just try to pack it full of goodies and stuff. So that's my number one way with networking with my readers. I am on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is increasingly becoming a great way to find new people, and it's just fun. It's very visual. It's very not traumatic, like some other mediums can be. It's very kind of soothing. And so Instagram for sure, Facebook for sure has been a constant. And I don't think TikTok just seems to be so beyond what my generation. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I know some people are doing great on TikTok. Yeah, I don't even think that I could. My kids are like, you would never you don't get it. You don't get the like aesthetic or the humor or, whatever. And then as far as other authors, conferences are a wonderful place, but obviously it's been more difficult with COVID. The online conferences, you don't get that same sort of casual, meet and greet kind of thing. And then Twitter, I would never try to sell a book on Twitter ever. Never advertise on Twitter, because it's not a place that people go to find books to read. But for networking with other authors and connecting with other authors, it's a really great place. Right. It's really hard. You have to ignore all the political stuff, though. You have to really be very careful about who you follow. And yeah.
So since you mentioned her, I should do a disclaimer that your assistant Trish is my assistant. I actually did a lot of her training, but also she's my primary graphic designer. So all of the branded Adriel Wiggins images that you see all over the place, she did not design the initial logo, but she has taken that logo and designed so many other things for me.
She's amazing.
I can't recommend her enough, even though she's probably going to hit me for actually saying that on a.
Don't take her away. Don't need her for so many things. But it's amazing. Like the newsletter, I sent her this ugly as sin Word document that has like red notes all over it, and it's totally like I hate formatting, and so things are weirdly indented and everything. And then she sends it back like 2 days later, with graphics, and it's all like beautiful. And yeah, and I appreciate that so much, because I love a beautiful looking thing. I just don't know how to get there. And I know that's not my skill set. So I'm like, awesome, like run with it. And then that leaves me more time to write books. So it's a win-win. Yeah.
That's what a good assistant's for.
Totally.
So,
totally.
what's one mistake you've made in your publishing career that you'd like to warn other authors off of?
I definitely have paid too much for certain things. Like, I was not rebranding, but recovering my memoirs, because I was realizing my original cover designs that were very kind of homemade and stuff, they were becoming outdated. And also they looked really unclear in the Amazon thumbnail size. Mm-hmm. And so I'd been to this conference, and I kind of somehow became convinced that you had to really pay a lot in order to get really great covers. And so I paid like $10,000 to get my series of 5 or 6 books recovered at that point. And yeah, it helped sales, but not enough comparatively.
$10,000.
And yeah, and so that was just, I don't know. And my husband was saying, he was like, that's a lot. And I'm like, no, but it's like an investment. And anyway, I didn't make that mistake again. And then once too, I found, I used a site to find like sort of professional editors, because I was having a hard time. My previous developmental editor had retired, and I was trying to find a new one. And I found one on this site that kind of was a recommendation engine, and they had checked out and everything, but they were from traditional publishing. And so I thought, okay, like, I'm willing to pay for a really good edit. And that was for actually my first novel, because it was my first novel I'd written. So I really wanted a really good professional edit. And again, I paid too much, $3,000, and she barely edited at all. And then she also did the copy edit, and there was so many errors that actually Amazon pulled that book down like 2 days after. And I paid $3,000 for an edit that was basically not an edit. And she's like, well, that's the way it works in traditional publishing. So I was like, okay, so maybe I will stick to editors who are used to working with the indie market, because I didn't realize that there was such a vast difference between the way that traditional, and this is just a one-off. This might not be I don't want to make a generalization, because this was just one experience I had. But it made me think, okay, that's like something I'll have to be aware of in the future. And I did do the traditional publishing process. My cookbook is traditionally published through a publisher, and but it was a small press, so I think that was a bit of a different. And the editor there was fantastic. She did a great job, and there were several passes and stuff. But yeah, so those are 2 things that just be careful. Like if you think that you're going to turn your career around by spending a lot of money on something, think about it harder. Really think about it. Yeah, because in both of those cases, it didn't impact my bottom line, and I've kind of lost quite a bit of money. So yeah.
And that also highlights the importance of sending sample chapters for editors to see how well you mesh with them. Because a lot of times I've heard the comment that an author sent the same sample chapter to like 10, 15 different editors, and only one came back with the comments that they were looking for.
Yes.
Those. And it's not that the others were bad. It's just they have a different editing style that might not match with your writing style.
Yeah.
How you want your end product to be. And some editors are more teachers than others. Some are, how to put this nicely, slightly more militant on how things should be. While others are much more, you have this option or this option, totally up to you. Right.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Finding a good editor that you work well with for your genre,
who knows your genre, that's really important. Yeah.
That's the purpose of shopping around.
Yeah.
And as a continuity editor, it's very difficult for me to do that, because I might not catch a continuity mistake until chapter 6 or 7. And if you've only sent me 2 chapters, there's really not much I can do about that.
No, exactly.
Definitely with copy editors, you want to definitely test them out before you send them everything and pay.
Oh, for sure. And it's just like readers, there might be very good editors, but they're just not the right fit for you in your book. Like, so it's all about finding that fit. And I've had to kind of, in a friendly way, part ways with editors who like were too nice, that great, this is great, but not actually being harsh enough in a way. And then other editors who were so big on having everything grammatically perfectly that they just stripped the book of my voice, like making every contraction, bringing it out to the full, taking away any contraction in the book, even in the dialogue. And that it would strip me of my kind of writerly voice. And so that wasn't a good fit either. For me, it might be a good fit for somebody else. But now I found one who really like is great. Like she just gives me the level of editing that's perfect. And she always has a bunch of really valuable insights. And so it's really good. Yeah.
So what are you currently reading?
I'm actually reading, I'm not a huge sci-fi reader, but I'm reading Hail Mary, the new book by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. I'm a total space geek, so I loved The Martian. I'm rewatching, I saw Star Trek Voyager is playing on Netflix, so I'm rewatching it from the beginning of the evening. I'm a total, anything about space, I'm reading it. So I don't write it, but I love reading it. So I'm really enjoying, I'm about halfway through, and it's a great sci-fi novel. It's fantastic. Right. And the next one I have lined up is Emily Henry's next one. I think it's People We Meet on Vacation. And I loved her last year's book, Beach Read, that I just thought that was the most fantastic. It's kind of categorized as rom-com, but it's kind of romance. I don't know, it's fantastic. And the dialogue in that book is so clever and hilarious. And yeah, she's a writer that she's kind of an automatic buy for me. Right. Yeah. And then I'm also reading Emma St. Clair's, like her love cliche series, and that's really good. I always have 3 or 4 books on the go at any point. So, and then I'm also reading this. Yeah, this Past Imperfect by Julian Fellows. Mm-hmm. A friend lent that to me too, so I'm reading that too. So yeah. Speaking you like reading, that too?
reading multiple things at a time.
Yeah.
Check out totallynovel.com and go to the blog. I published a post there last month. Yes, it was April's post about how to get more reading in as an author, different ways that you can squeeze more books into your day because you don't have enough because you're writing.
No, I don't know if you know Becca Syme's The Strength for Writers course. Like, yeah. So I just recently took that during COVID, and I'm like a number 2 input. And so people who are high input, they need this constant information. So now I don't feel guilty about like having 3 or 4 books on the go. And
no, you shouldn't.
Yeah. And it's like fuel, I guess. It's like high octane fuel for my brain. So yeah.
So do you have any super fans found you yet? And if so, what sorts of things have they done that seemed a little bit surreal to you?
Well, I love my readers so much. I have such great readers. Like, I'll have ones in like remote part of Asia or, like the Eastern European bloc countries who will like go out of their way. They'll do some it's hard for them to get their hands on my paperbacks and stuff, but they'll go through, like they'll have like a friend in the UK to buy for them and send it to them. And the support for my cookbook when it came out, like I had people cooking these recipes like all over the world and like emailing me about, well, I couldn't find this ingredient, but I replaced it with this that I can find in my country. And this is how it turned out. And then I also have, really nothing like completely crazy, but yeah, just so much like amazing feedback and so much support. And for me, like so many of these readers have been with me through like my decline before my transplant. Like I was, really going downhill, and I was probably 3 or 4 months, like, well, after my transplant, they actually said like you probably had like 6 weeks left before dying. So I got very close to that. And these readers like were supporting me. Like when I was after my transplant, I kept getting flowers and candy, and they've somehow figured out the address to my hospital room when I was basically unconscious, and they sent me books and cards and flowers and from all over the world. And so these readers have really been through with me through thick and thin, and have supported me and encouraged me, and I just love them. I really do love them. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about finding readers who are the right fit with you. And then, not worrying about the people who what you're putting out in the world doesn't resonate with them, because, that's okay. That's like, it's not going to resonate with everyone, but to really focus your energy on those people who it does resonate with. And because it's such a rewarding thing, Yeah.
That's excellent. So when people read your books, what do you want their greatest takeaway to be?
For me, like the theme of love as something that's really transcendent in the human experience. That's something and that it's something worth fighting for, and that it can really change a human life, and love in all its facets, not just romantic love, friendship, and a child-parent relationship. And so definitely that. I do want them to always kind of come away with a sense of escape, that they've been able to, because for me, when I was so sick, really any time in my life, I read when I'm happy, I read when I'm sad, but when I'm struggling and stressed, books have been like my greatest salvation, like being able to escape in a story when I'm like waiting for a liver biopsy result, or something like that. And when I do get notes from readers who said, I was like going through chemo, or I was accompanying my spouse as they were like in hospice or something, and your books, like, they allowed me to go somewhere else, and somewhere joyful, and somewhere heartwarming and life affirming during those terrible hours. And for me, that is like, it always makes me cry. That's the greatest compliment, because so many writers have done that for me. And allowed me to get through some of the toughest times in my life. So I really want the readers to get an experience of escape. And I always, I'm kind of relentlessly optimistic about human nature. I mean, I had my friend donated her entire right lobe of her liver to me. So how can I not be optimistic? I really believe in the transcendent nature of humans, and love, and the generosity, and how they can be so heroic. And I hope that they come away with that from my books. Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you very much for joining me today and chatting with me for a little bit. You can read more author interviews and watch them as I record more at adrielwiggins.com/category/interviews. I do warn you that those also include customer spotlights and places where I have been interviewed. So it's not just all author interviews, but you will find many there. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.